Here we go. Good afternoon, Crystal. How are you, ma'am?
I am good. It's awesome. We're in March, Women's History Month, which is really significant in this time in period in our political world. So I'm all about raising up the women this month.
Well, I'm right there with you. That sounds like a great idea. I'm so glad you brought that up because it is incredibly important. And just today, I saw an example of women being taken advantage of. So yes, a good topic. So a very good way to learn how to stand up for yourself and have those folks around you stand up for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I have to tell you, I am excited about the broadcast. Of course, I'm probably usually excited about the broadcast. A, I get to spend time with you. B, I get to hang out and talk to stuff that I'm very passionate about. And I'll work on C later, I guess. But anyway, I'm excited about this broadcast
Okay.
because, um, as you mentioned, um, these are subjects that people don't necessarily talk about, and they end up in bad situations. So, what we're going to talk about is one, the state of the required minimum distributions, RMDs, and two, the article that you sent with regarding three retirement income mistakes. So, how about I will kick this off by reading your bio. You jump
Okay.
in when you want, and and then we'll go from there. And we'll see how it goes. How's that?
All right. Sounds good to me.
Okay, here we go. So, hello everyone. Please welcome my friend and colleague, Crystal Mitchell. She is a business coach and consultant. She's the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions. She's co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, the co-host of The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, that other radio show. She's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College, a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor, and a QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. Hey, Crystal, how you doing?
I am good. And yourself?
I am Jevon Thomas. I am a licensed retirement plan advisor, which means I know a lot about retirement plans and I'm extremely loud about it. So, are you ready
But
to
you're
go?
expert at it, so I like it. If you are as someone said, a smear, a subject matter expert, you're supposed to be loud about it, right?
Let's hope. Let's hope, because I certainly am. Okay. So, so let's talk about those RMDs. Of course, everybody knows that if you have a qualified plan, a 401k or an IRA, you have to take a required minimum distribution. Sometimes people call them MRDs. I don't know why, minimum required distributions, but the deal is that in the past, that is up until 22, 20,
Mm-hmm.
20, yeah, 22. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you had to take this required minimum distribution at 70 and a half. Then the age moved to 72, and starting in 2023, the age is now 73. So what does that mean? It means that if you weren't 72 or you weren't 70 and a half previously and you're 73 now, you need to start taking your required minimum distribution. We did have a suspension a little while ago during the pandemic, uh,
Mm-hmm.
COVID. That is over. That is gone. So um, you really want to connect with your financial services firm and make sure that you are eligible or not eligible to take your required minimum distribution. I say that in that particular way because um, the required minimum distribution, in generally, uh, people are taking out enough money to work to handle that anyway. It's not like they
Right.
want to take all that money out, but for some of us who have made large amounts of cash and have been able to save it away, the RMD can be a tax burden, right? So you got to take the money out, you got to pay the taxes on it, and that's the deal. They want you to
Mm.
pay taxes on some of that money. So, what about the exceptions? Well, we know about the one for COVID, right? Where folks that were 70 and a half, they didn't have to take the required minimum distribution. That's gone. The
Right.
other one that people don't realize is that if you are still working for the place where your 401k is or your 403b is, if you're still employed at that place, then you do not have to take your required minimum distribution from that particular account. Right? So if you have an IRA outside of your 403b, let's say, then you do need to take the required minimum distribution from the IRA. But if you're still working as a teacher, as a professor, as a custodian, or however it is that you're working there at the university or the college, then you don't have to take it from there. And it's for that reason that we see lots of folks take their old RMDs, their old 403bs or old 401ks, and they roll them into their current one so that they can avoid the required minimum distribution. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's a strategy that they can use.
Exactly. And I think you were talking to me about it. Did you have a professor you were working with that was thinking of retiring, and he'd worked well into his 70s? That was probably someone else. Okay.
So, yeah, that wasn't me.
Yeah. So we have some folks that are working well into their 70s because, if you're at a university, sometimes you can work well into your retirement years, right? So as long as those folks are still working, they don't have to worry about the required minimum distribution. Now, don't get it twisted. Don't make the mistake that I made. So when my father got old enough to take his, where he had to take his required minimum distribution, he called me up and says, "How do I do this?" And I realized then that my father owned his own business. Yes. So even though he was still working in his own business, because he was an owner, he was not able to avoid the required minimum distribution. So the required minimum distribution, let's call it the need not to take it. What's the word we wanted? The avoidance thing. The way that you avoid the required minimum distribution is if you happen to work at a company where you're not more than a 5% owner. So, bottom line, you got to take the required minimum distribution if you own the company or if you've moved those assets to an IRA, right?
Okay.
Even though you're still working. So you want to talk with your financial advisor about what's going to be the best strategy for you, and make sure that you're making that decision accordingly. Question?
No. That's good advice. Good advice. And especially if, again, the employee angle or person versus the self-employed person, can be very confusing for a lot of people because, and then I know as an entrepreneur, we tend to not fit into the regular categories. We're outside, always outside of the categories.
Yes. So looking at that, that's a great point. If you happen to be a solopreneur or you own a very small company or you've got several little companies going there, and each one of those several little companies has a 401k, or let's say most of us, you were working, you stopped working for someone else, started working for yourself, and now you have your own 401k, right? And you were smart enough to move your past 401k into your own 401k. But unfortunately, you own the firm, so you have to take the required minimum distribution.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, folks, take note.
So that's the RMD. Now, if that's okay, we have some other really cool things to talk about that you had actually sent me in an article I thought was very interesting because, well, to be honest with you, I don't always put these in the same category. So the three of them are: one, when it comes to managing your retirement assets, what are the three things that really trick people up? One is selling in a downturn. The second is collecting Social Security too early. And the third is creating an inefficient distribution strategy. So let's break those down. We got about 20 minutes or so. Let's kind of let's kind of jump into there. Okay, so the first one, you're going to retire, you're looking forward to retirement, and all of a sudden you find out the country is going into a major downturn. Should you set up your retirement portfolio? And then the big kicker is, should you start living on that money, which means you're going to be selling in that downturn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So most financial advisors, and this article is going to say, don't do that. Do not sell in a downturn. And the reason for that is, if you sell in a downturn, then that means that those stocks that had grown, they are going to be worth less. So you're going to have to sell more of them in order to get the money that you need, because most people need cash when they retire. They need
Mm-hmm.
house payment. They need ongoing medical care or whatever. They can't just
Mm-hmm.
give someone stock that used to be valued something. So
Right.
they need that cash. So in that situation, it's going to take you more cash to get what you had anticipated, or more stock to get the cash that you needed than you had anticipated. So if you can, you want to not sell in that time. So what does that mean? So for many of us, that means we're going to take a look at where we are and we're going to work another year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or we're going to set up our portfolios in the beginning so that we have that emergency cash just in case we need it, right? And we're going to
Mm-hmm.
use that to live on instead of the assets in our retirement plan. Okay. Whatever the decision is, you're going to have to make sure that you've set up, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, you've set up a fairly efficient way for you to get that cash out of there. And if you can avoid selling in a downturn, if you can do as little of that as possible, life is good. Now, let's fast forward 15 years into your retirement. You're collecting X amount of dollars from, this retirement fund that you've got set up, and the market tanks. What are you going to do? Well, you're pretty much in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to do what you got to do. You got to take that money. But there are some very interesting products out there that can, well, they can help you glide over some of those rough spots for a certain degree. They're not paying me, so I'm not going to tell people about them right now. But if you talk with your financial advisor, you can set up your portfolio so that the annuities that you get, for example, may be able to have some coverage for you. You can set up your portfolio so that you've got some of those defensive stocks in there that aren't as volatile. So if you're going to take money out, maybe devise a way to take some out of there and some out of your other portfolio. So talk with your financial advisor about, okay, how do I bulletproof my portfolio so that even in times of economic downturn, I can make money. And even though I need to pull money out, it's not going to hurt me as much. How do I set that up? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And let me ask, so assets we're thinking far as stocks and other mutual funds and other things that are housed within their retirement plan, their 401k, right?
Right.
What about because when we also think of selling assets in a downturn, and I just heard this situation or scenario the other day. So one spouse is already retired
Mm-hmm.
and have been retired for a number of years. The second spouse is retiring in a few months,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're thinking of selling their home and then buying another home in another state.
Ah.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, since one is, and I don't, as far as obviously qualifying and stuff for having income coming in, but what are your thoughts on whether that's advisable at this point, or waiting, or should have happened before, or what?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not a real estate person, so you'd want to
Right.
talk.
I'm saying it from the retirement side.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking purely from the retirement side, because I don't want to get into the bank loan and how that
Right,
works. But when I started in this business, the rule of thumb was, okay, you want to have your retirement portfolio, that is everything that you're going to live on. You want your retirement portfolio to generate 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. So that means if you get all the money you're going to get out of there,
Mm-hmm.
you want that to be 70 to 80% of your retirement income. And that
Mm-hmm.
assumes a couple of things. One, you don't have a house payment. Two, you're pretty healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And three, you don't have any major expenses that you can see coming up. Paying for kids' college, you know, buying a huge motorhome or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that, we had to adjust because not only did people start living longer, but they started being more active. They didn't have the good sense to die at 70 like they used to back in the day when FDR set up Social Security. So
Right.
now they're living into their 80s. Then they started living to their 80s and 90s, and now they're even living longer than that. Okay, so now we're looking at, since folks are living longer and albeit healthier, they're starting to do things and they're starting to run out of money. The 80% isn't enough. So now we say your retirement portfolio needs to generate 110% of your pre-retirement income. So that means, like, because we found out that people like to go travel and hiking and camping and hang out with their grandkids and all kinds of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
now it costs them even more to live than it used to. And that's still assuming they don't have a house payment.
Mm.
All right. So now, fast forward until the last 10 years or so. I think I'm dating myself here, but the last 10 years or so. And now we're saying, okay, we still need that. We still need that 110%, but we're finding that there are lots of folks out there who are just really tired of mowing the lawn, and they're really
Mm-hmm.
tired of cleaning the gutters, and they're really tired of taking care of the house. And so they're renting. And as
Mm.
a financial advisor, I'm a little bit afraid of rent, right? My landlord just came to raise my rent 2 days ago, right? So when I retire, I don't want that. I don't want, to be thinking, okay, my house payment is going to be X, $2,000, let's say, and that's what it's going to be for the next 30 years or so, and then have somebody come in and say, oh, by the way, this year your house payment is going to be $2,300 a month, and next year it's going to be $2,300 or $2,600 a month or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can really eat into your savings there. So,
And it's not, at least with a house payment, it's kind of locked in. So
pretty much
no
for the
one's
next
going to
30
tell
years.
you in 2
Yeah.
years or a year that
Or
there's
better
going to
yet,
be
your house is paid off. In other
your
words,
house is paid off. Yeah, that's even
that's the
better.
best situation.
So you don't have
You
to,
don't have
you don't
that.
have to allocate or kind of figure out how that's going to fit in. Because once you close that gap is closed,
There
right?
you go.
So
There you
you
go.
can't, you've already reallocated other expenses in the space of what the house payment was. But with rent, rent is not of your control.
That's a
Whatever
big
that
chunk. Too.
right,
It's,
unless you're living in some sort of rent control kind of environment, but really you have no control over the raising and the lowering of that rent. So yeah, it's interesting because that happens. I would think a good scenario, again, being not in real estate or the retirement, but downsizing so that even if you did have a smaller mortgage, but generally if you downsize, you probably could pay it off and then may even have some other reserves to allocate to what your retirement plan is, some other savings or so forth in your bank. But
well, and not only that, but you remember my colleague Tony was on the show.
mhm,
You may be able to qualify for a reverse mortgage,
yeah,
which, if you are planning to move out of state because you can't handle these beautiful summers and winters that we have here in Southern California, you'd
right.
rather experience that horrible summer out in someplace hot, wherever that is. If that's your
Wherever has hot and humidity. How about
exactly.
that?
Yeah. I'm not going to cause any just aspersions, right? but I am glancing over that way. Not directly, just with a glance over the way.
Right,
If
exactly.
you live in a very hot, if you move to go to some hot and humid place that's dramatically less expensive, then you can do exactly what you're saying. Okay, I still got 15 years to go on my house. I'm going to pay this house off, downsize over there, or I'm going to pay this house off, get some cash, go over there, set up a reverse mortgage, and now I've got some other options that we can do some things with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most people don't like me to say this because they want to leave something to their children, and I get that. I totally do. They want to keep the house in the family, let's say, because real estate is a great way to transfer wealth. But when there comes that time where mom and dad need that cash flow for whatever reason, or it's a burden to take care of mom and dad because we've got kids in college and we got to do something, that reverse mortgage might be a good way to go now. And then we've got to talk about some strategies about that. So to answer your question, to get back to that, I think having your house paid off is the best way to go. And if that means selling your house, downsizing and buying a smaller house in a very in a faraway place from Southern California, or some place that I don't want to be in Southern California, if that's the case, then so be it. That's, we have to do what we have to do.
Right. So, okay. Yeah. Just kind of, and that reverse mortgage, and we can probably readdress that again this year, since that was the last year. Definitely, I had someone on one of my other podcasts a couple weeks ago, and they were all about a long-term year after post-retirement, caring for elderly parents, caring for yourself, long-term, care, and the cost of that. And that was also that reverse mortgage was, that's a pretty good way to go, considering, there are a lot more protections in place than it used to be.
Yes.
But and one of the things, because I suggested, and they're actually in the real estate industry. One of them was anyway. I even suggested, if you're doing it earlier on and you're healthy, identifying one of your kids or nieces, nephews, whomever, that are in a position that, we got, like you said, we're not dying at 70 these days. We're dying, I saw Marina. I was at a party this weekend with a 90-year-old who was over there dancing and doing all kinds of things. So don't look like she's checking out no
things. You're doing things, not even things.
She's doing things. And she don't look like she's checking out no time soon. That gives you enough time, at least 10, 15 years, to help prepare someone to be able to refi your home. I mean, 10 years is a long time, right? To get credit placed, money saved, what is it? Planning is what we always talk about, planning, right? Yeah. So you could allocate that to one of your children or a loved one and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but we have a strategy plan. So we got to make sure you're in place so you can maintain and keep the family home. And 10 years. So we can plan for this. We ain't leaving tomorrow. Right. So we got time to plan. So I think, so yeah, maybe we can have Tony back on again to have that conversation about reverse mortgages and how they could be a great strategy or a tool, or available strategy or tool.
He's asked me several times when he's going to be able to do that. So we can definitely make that happen. And
okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. I think you're embarking upon an excellent point. We're living longer. That gives us, that's not only a burden, right? That is an opportunity to do some things, right? And one of those is Social Security. What do we do with Social Security? So that's number 2. So great segue. Collecting Social Security too early was the point in the article that was made. Many folks, they get tired at 62 and they think, I want to hold this up. I want to be done. I want to hang up my boots. But if we wait until 67,
Sorry.
Who's that?
That was just my phone kicked off. Sorry.
I don't have a life. I thought someone was talking to me. So if we wait till 67, there's more money that's going to come our way. And if we
Mm-hmm.
wait until we're 70, then there's even more money coming our way, right? So maybe it does you good to wait for a little bit longer. That is, even if you're not working, just wait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be working, we need the income, but just wait for those few extra years so that you can get more monies. I would also say, because there's always an exception to everything here, one of the one of the points that someone made while I was talking with a group of folks is, um, of course, if you can wait, great, because that's a bigger check.
Mm-hmm.
But let's check out your life expectancy. If most
Mm.
people in your family die at 72, you might be right there with them. So maybe it behooves you to get that money now and start enjoying your life.
Mm. Okay.
And then the person brought up another really good idea. He says, let's say you haven't saved anything or very much money. So if you can take that 10 years, you can start at 62, get that money in, put that money immediately into your retirement plan, your 401k plan. For many folks, that's almost $2,000 a month. So we're looking at 24,000 a year, give or take,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
market help there. So if you can dump that $24,000 into your retirement plan, after 10 years, you've got yourself $240,000, maybe a little bit of help from the market. You're right at the cusp of getting yourself a decent annuity, right? So now, let's say your house is paid off, you've got yourself a nice annuity, plus you're still getting the Social Security check. That might be a good plan for you. Does that make
Mm.
sense? It
Mm-hmm.
might
Mm-hmm.
be a good plan. And so, in that way, taking the money early is a good idea because you can put it away and save it and not spend it. And if you put it in your portfolio pre-tax, if you put it in pre-tax, you don't have to pay tax on it,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, but until you pull the money out anyway. So you really want to sit down and, as you said, plan for what's going to be the best situation for you. And for some of us, is going to be waiting. For some of us, is going to be waiting till they're 70 and there is no more reason to wait. And for some of us,
Mm-hmm.
you need to get that money early and make it work for you.
Mm. Okay. Just taking, yeah,
Yeah.
because I get that quite a bit. A lot of my colleagues and friends are at that place. They're still working. They have their own business, but they have monies in their for Social Security. Whether they should wait or go on and do it now. So it's I guess it depends on where you are in your lifestyle, your financial
And what your plan
portfolios,
is. I
and
mean,
what your
first,
plan is. Mm-hmm.
as you so eloquently suggested, get a plan first and let's
Mm-hmm.
go from there. And the reason I tell you that I like a plan is because 9 times out of 10, that plan's going to change. I mean, I used to ask people what they were going to do for retirement, and I'd get answers like, oh, we're going to buy a motorhome and go to the national parks, or oh, we're going to buy this pickup and we got these motorcycles and we're going to like cruise the country, or oh, we're going to visit each one of our grandkids and we're just going to
Mm-hmm.
spend a little time with each grandkid and we're just going to go from place to place. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time they start on that path, maybe a year in, they're thinking, I'd rather just stay home. I don't need to go to the national parks. Oh, the parks are hard. The ground is hard. I don't like sleeping in that camper. Or B,
I don't
I'm
like
just
my
like,
family now.
I don't need to see my grandkids that much, right? Or, or that motorcycle seat is hard. No, 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 I'm not doing that.
Right.
So we make a new plan, but you have to start someplace, right? That's the key. You have to start someplace, and I think making a plan is okay. Let's get to the last one before I hold
Okay.
people too late, and that is creating an inefficient distribution strategy. So some people think that, hey, I've got all this money in my 401k and in my IRA, and I'm getting Social Security. I'm good. I'm just going to take a little bit out. Well, let's not necessarily do that.
Mm.
Let's find a great and efficient way to take that money out so that it doesn't hurt you as much. And by the way, let's figure out how much you can take out and still have your core amount of money there in the bank, right? Maybe you can figure that your account should grow by 3% or 4% or 6%. And so it does you well to be able to take out 3% or 4%. And that's it. And that's what your budget is, right? So let's do a little bit more planning. Maybe we're going to take your portfolio at the suggestion of a solid financial advisor and say, you know what, this core portion of my portfolio, I'm going to invest in some stocks that are, let's use the word stable. Notice I didn't say safe.
Right.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, what is that?
Exactly. Maybe stable. Right? So, and keep a small modicum of growth there, but maybe stable. And then those other stocks that are a little more volatile, we're going to put those over here. And somewhere in the middle, those are the ones we're going to live on, or whatever combination works out for you. But don't just be inefficient with your distribution. Don't just take that check out every month. And then, 5 years later, you're wondering why you don't have any money. Yeah. So we don't do it. So the long and short of it is create a distribution strategy. It's just as important as creating and deciding what it is that you want to do for those final years, or that next chapter, as you like to say, the next chapter.
The next chapter. The last quarter.
Okay. So let's kind of do a quick review. Number one, we know that RMDs are 73. That started in 2023. 73 to get your RMD. That if you're working and you have money in your 401k plan and you're past the age of 73, or you are 73, you still need to take your required minimum distribution. If you are not more than a 5% owner of a company, you are an employee. If you're still working at the age of 73, then you do not have to take your required minimum distribution until that age where you start, where you actually retire. Does that make sense? Okay, that's one. Number three, or number two, number B, when we take a look at income mistakes, number one that I hate is selling in a down market. Avoid selling in a down market if at ever possible. The next one, take a look at when is a good idea for you to take your Social Security check. For some people, they can afford to wait, and that's okay. For some of us, we need to take the money now and ultimately make a plan. And for some of us, we can wait until we're 70. But whatever it is, have a plan as to what you're going to do with the money. Talk with that financial advisor and make sure this is right for you. This is a good thing for you, because they're all appropriate.
Right.
Now, waiting or waiting to the longest, it's all appropriate depending on the person.
Okay.
And then the last thing we covered is make sure you create an efficient distribution strategy. Create a distribution strategy that's going to last you for the long term. Right? Do that. That might be involving selling your assets in your Roth IRA before you sell the assets in your traditional IRA. It may mean selling your assets in your 401k before you sell the Roth assets. It might mean getting more defensive stocks that are going to be a bit more stable in a large portion of your portfolio. Whatever it is, talk with a financial advisor, get yourself a plan, stick with that, and understand, as I say, your plan is going to change. But start with your plan.
Have a plan so that if you do have to change, you have something to refer back to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. So, Crystal, how about this? How about if I read your bio and then you give us the last word? Will that work?
All righty. Sounds fantastic.
Okay, here we go. Hello, folks. Thank you for joining Crystal and myself. Crystal is Crystal Mitchell. Let's get the whole name in there. Crystal.
Okay.
Crystal Mitchell is a business coach and consultant. She's the CEO of Mitchell Business Solutions. She's the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars, co-host of The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, another weekly online radio show. She's an instructor at Mount San Antonio Community College and a certified network for teaching entrepreneurship instructor and a QuickBooks Pro Advisor financial strategist. Hey, Crystal, take us out.
All righty.
Wait about me.
But-
I'm Jevon Thomas. I'm a licensed
Who are you?
retirement plan advisor. Okay, now take us out.
Okay. And that's fantastic because it segues right into my final. So all of these are phenomenal strategies and suggestions and ideas. And if nothing else, just to get your head in the right space, the thinking space as to what that looks like when that time comes, because everyone's needs are different. But I think having a conversation with your retirement plan advisor is a great way to start that, because if you're not, everyone has an expertise in the areas that they're in. This is not something that happens every day. Turning 65 only happens once, or 73 only happens once. And so if you don't really have a clue of what that looks like, or you have concerns and questions, you really truly need to sit down with an expert in that space, and then be able to help you create that strategy.
Well said. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Crystal, for hanging out with me. And that is our broadcast for today. We'll see you next time.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a great week.